and then I go straight to pause.
Pause the video.
And I'll pause it. And I'll pause it.
Yeah, pause the video, Chris.
Okay, pausing it now.
So I'm just going to change the thumbnail.
And I'm going to pause it here.
Give us 2 seconds here, Chris. So if you're just joining us here, guys, as you probably know already, if you're a regular on our, Q&As, takes me a couple of minutes to get everything sorted out to social media. But why I do that, Chris, what's been happening in your world since we last chatted?
I think I've just been really busy. You know me, I've used this new hashtag called busiest pilot in Britain because I'm just continuously working from roster to roster to roster. I've just got back from Tel Aviv yesterday. And I haven't flown to Tel Aviv since pre-COVID. And unfortunately, due to the pandemic, because Britain's now being classed as a red country, we had to stay in the hotel, so we weren't allowed to leave, which is such a shame because the guy I was flying with has returned from 15 months of being unemployed to coming back, and yet he had to sit in his hotel room.
So, bloody hell.
So it's a bit of a shock to the system, but these are the things that we're dealing with now.
Absolutely, yeah. So just give us 2 seconds here, folks, for who's joining us now. There we go. Yeah, so Chris, while we get the people coming in and everything, maybe you can just give us, if you haven't watched the interview already, a bit about your career and where you are, currently.
Absolutely, Mike. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Chris Pohl, or Captain Chris on Instagram. I've been flying for 39 years. In fact, on my next birthday, that'll make it 40 years. And I still look this incredibly young, don't I? Which is amazing. But I started flying in 1981, my 18th birthday, I think it was, or just before then. I've been flying I was an Aussie bush pilot. You've obviously picked up the accent yet. I was an Aussie bush pilot. I flew just about everything made by Cessna Beechcraft, Piper, in Australia, that was available in Australia, before I joined the airlines with 3,000 hours in 1987. I joined Ansett Airlines. I flew a Fokker F-27 with them, and then they got this brand new aeroplane called the Sky Star, they called it. It was actually the A350, but Ansett called it the Sky Star. I flew that in 1989 for Ansett Airlines, and that was it. 6 months later, Ansett Airlines had a large industrial dispute. In fact, all the big airlines had an industrial dispute. And I found myself unemployed, which I then left the country and disappeared to the UK. You're not going to believe this, Mike. It's just started raining here, and I'm sitting outside.
Oh, no. Do you want to change location?
I'm going to just put the umbrella out. Stand by with a beautiful picture.
Stand by, folks.
Okay, that's what we say in aviation, preparation. So be prepared. Be prepared for everything. So I had a big umbrella ready just in case. So I'm actually sitting out in my garden because it's been the most beautiful day, but I believe it's thunderstorms and lightning over there now, is it?
Yeah, on my end, Chris, here, I can hear the thunder out there, so it's just, typical British weather, but there we go. So I'm just going to get this out on Instagram. I'm going to tag you in, Chris.
Okay.
So maybe while we get the questions in, Chris, maybe you can tell us, how this whole Instagram, your fame came about.
Well, it came about this time. No, it was probably about March, April last year. I was sitting at home like most UK pilots, wondering if I'd ever fly again. But luckily, Virgin kept going with cargo flying. So we were doing a lot of cargo flying at the beginning. And while I was sitting at home at my home in France, where I'm speaking to you now, I thought, wow, really need to do something about this. So I thought, what can I do? And my son helped me as well with an image of an out-of-work pilot holding up a cardboard sign, which not saying, employ me or give me work, but a better message was to say, buy airline tickets, right? So not just buy airline tickets like he bought toilet paper, because as we knew at the beginning of the pandemic, supermarket shelves were running out of toilet paper because people were panic buying. So I had this funny idea that if you started panic buying airline tickets, that would keep us all employed and keep the aircraft flying. So that's how it came about. And it's really weird how here we are just over a year on from that now, and that message is still quite important. Aviation is out there, aeroplanes are still flying, but we've got a lot of our colleagues aground at the moment because we're not flying passengers, we're flying cargo. And the only way we can start flying passengers again is, one, if the government start letting us, but two, if people start making forward bookings to basically put trust back in aviation, because to put trust that they want to go somewhere, that they want to go on holiday, they want to go and visit their friends, they need to do that important business meeting. And by doing that, by buying an airline ticket, you're saying to the airlines, we still want to fly with you. And then the airlines can then get pilots ready and start increasing our flights and so on.
Absolutely. So as you can see, there's a few questions coming in on the side.
Yes,
there,
coming
Chris.
up.
So I'm going to let you loose, but if you need me for anything, just give me a shout. And guys, get your questions coming in, and hopefully you'll enjoy this brilliant Q&A.
Excellent. Okay, so the first one there from Alan there says, buy airline tickets like you buy toilet paper. Thank you very much indeed, Alan. And I know you've been there from the start with me trying to promote this message, and it is an important message, and it's still appropriate today, and I've just mentioned it now. Okay, wonderful evening there from Issy Said Mohammed. Thank you very much. It's not a wonderful evening here. It's just started raining, which is bizarre. Alan's also said, if you hear terrain, but there's no terrain outside the cockpit, what do you do? Well, if we're IMC, which means inside the clouds, instrument meteorological conditions, we obviously listen to the cockpit voice recorder and immediately take action. But if there's no terrain below us, we can then consider our actions before making a go-around or evasive action. So the only reason it would give us a terrain warning would be the possibility of a malfunction of the system, or maybe there's an aircraft underneath us, but that would also give us a TCAS warning as well. So obviously we're always ready for anything, but yeah, really good question. Oliver says, 380s left to come out of storage. What does that mean for most of the VS staff back working? Okay, so Oliver, right now, I've just spoken to one of our pilots today. She's over in Dresden picking up one of our A330s right now with one of the captains, and they'll be flying that back to the UK, I think, tomorrow, or maybe Manchester. But we do have eight A380s still outstanding. They will be coming back, and as soon as we can get people back in the cockpits, as you've probably seen if you follow me on Instagram, that's what my main job at the moment is. I'm not flying the A350 too much because we've got the guys that we need to fly that, but the A330s are the aircraft that we're getting back into service now. And as a training captain, they need me to train in the simulator and on board the aircraft to get a lot of our colleagues that have spent many months sitting at home to get them back up to speed. The good news is these guys are just so determined and so ambitious that they're doing everything really well. In fact, I flew with a guy yesterday. It was only his third flight back, and it was like he hadn't had any time off. So they've done a lot of work, these pilots, to get back up to speed, and the standard is very, very, very high indeed. So we are getting pilots back just as soon as we can. Next question, Alan, can you tell me what airline did you fly before Virgin Atlantic? Gosh, I've had a long history. So I started this talk by saying I flew for Ansett Airlines in Australia. If you just come online and you've picked up my accent, I am, yes, Australian. I sound British to most Australians, but yes, I am Australian. Ansett Airlines had an industrial dispute with Trans-Australian Airlines back in 1989. I left Australia then. I came to the UK. I worked as an aircraft cleaner at Gatwick Airport while I converted my Australian ATPL with 5,000 hours and an A328 rating to the CAA ATPL. That took about 6 months. I immediately was lucky. The industry was booming, and I got a job with Air Europe. Remember Air Europe at Gatwick Airport? I flew the Fokker 100 with them. However, 6 months later, they went bust. I managed to get a short-term contract with KLM flying the Fokker 100, then Swissair through Park Aviation on the Fokker 100, before going out to Cyprus to fly for Eurocypria again on the A320. I flew with Eurocypria for 2.5 years based in Larnaca. Then I went out to Air Lanka, and I flew with Air Lanka on a short-term contract for 6 months before I came to Virgin at the start of '94 when they were buying the A340 300s. And I've been with Virgin since the beginning of 1994, which is 27 and a half years now. Long question, but that's my things. Right, I've got to get through these. So Issy Said Mohammed, question one. He's got a few questions here. My question is, if you're an aviation management graduate student and you want to become a pilot, what are the opportunities that you have into the knowledge, training, and fees of the VS flight school? Virgin Atlantic don't actually have a flight school. We did have a cadet program a few years ago. We did train quite a few pilots in that cadet scheme, but due to the pandemic, those cadets, I think, are still on the books with EasyJet. And I'm not sure, I can't say, I don't know, I'm trying to hide anything. I don't know if they're coming back to Virgin. I assume they will, if they've got seniority numbers with Virgin. And I know that some of our early cadet pilots are on what we call the hold pool list, and they will be coming back probably before the end of this year, so which is good news for them. But as far as a cadet scheme now, we don't have one at Virgin at the moment. We may have one again in the future. I'm a big believer that the pandemic will create lots of opportunities for pilots, but right now, at the moment, we don't have any cadet schemes or flying schools at Virgin Atlantic. Ever fly the A380? No, it's really weird. I've flown all the Airbuses, the A320, the A330, the A340, and now the A350, but I've never flown an A380. I'll never say never, but I've never flown an A380. Maybe I will in the future. Avgeek Joe. G'day, Avgeek Joe. So that was your question. Another one from Oliver. So Oliver, currently at a low-cost carrier, waiting for VS to join VS when the time comes about. What's the best thing to be working on while I wait? Oliver, the best thing is, I assume if you're a low-haul carrier, you're probably Ryanair or EasyJet. If you're at EasyJet, Airbus hours are fantastic to join our Airbus fleet. And if you're at Ryanair, the 737 hours are excellent to join our 787 fleet. So just keep building up those hours, keep building up your experience, and also build up your knowledge about Virgin Atlantic, because I do know one thing, that when you come for a Virgin Atlantic interview, you've got to fit in. And that's the most important thing. It's all about the people, because number one, you wouldn't get the interview at Virgin if you didn't have the right background or the right experience. So the fact that you've got an interview means that you have the right experience to join our airline. So the only thing that's different is at the interview is how you come across. So if you show that you're interested in the airline, that you know about our destinations, the aircraft we fly, and your general knowledge of the airline industry and long-haul operations is good, I would actually say speak to some of our pilots. It's a small industry. I'm sure you'll meet a Virgin Atlantic pilot like myself. Have a word to them, ask them about the company, where it's going, and that would be the best thing to prepare yourself for an interview with Virgin Atlantic. Also, I do say to people, Handling the Big Jets. If you haven't read that book, it's still applicable today. It's a great book for any young pilots to read, Handling the Big Jets. And the other one I would recommend that I get asked a lot is Ernest K. Gann's Fate is the Hunter. Fate is the Hunter, an excellent book, written in the late 40s or early 40s, I think. And that is a fantastic book to read. Okay, I'm getting stuck on questions. They're going to bank up, and Michael will have a go at me here. Timberwolf, cool name. U.S. Congress recently reopened investigations into UFO sightings, which are even being reported by U.S. Navy pilots. Have you or your fellow pilots ever sighted anything strange in the skies? I'm going to answer what Elon Musk says about UFOs. I think it's a great answer. He says, number one, there's no such thing as UFOs. And number two, if you'd come from outer space and you'd flown all the way to the Earth, and you wanted to make yourself known, you'd make yourself known. You'd land in Times Square and tell everybody, here I am. You wouldn't be hiding. And I think Elon Musk said, he said, if there are UFOs and there are aliens, they're a little bit shy. So I think UFO sightings, I'm not doubting these Navy pilots, but I'm assuming they've probably seen some sort of military aircraft they weren't supposed to see, or it's just tricks of the light or atmospherics that they're reporting. But myself, I've been flying 24,500 hours at high altitude. I've never seen anything other than the moon, the stars, and the sun. So, and I've been looking. Alan, the best route flown with Virgin Atlantic? What, the best route flown for me or the best route for a passenger? For me, I would say it's a toss-up, actually, because I spent most of my 30s and 40s flying the A340-300 back and forth to Hong Kong once a week. I was back and forth to Hong Kong, and then we get the A340-600. So I spent most of my life flying to Hong Kong. I know Hong Kong better than I know where I live, just because I spent 20 years flying back and forth to Hong Kong. So that's my favorite destination, the favorite route as well. It's a great flight. We used to have 4 pilots on that route, and that was just amazing. You never really got jet lag because you stay on local time. So that was my favorite route. Although I've been flying a lot to New York now with doing our cargo runs, and also LA on the 350. And I must say, I love going to New York. I've never been bored going to New York, and I've also never been bored going to LA. So I don't know, if people have said if you could only fly to one more destination for the rest of your career, I'd have to toss up between now LA and New York, because I love both of those places and I love flying there. So good question. Andy, quick, they're banking up. I've got to talk quicker. Andy C, here we go. How do you plan and what are the rules around ETOPs and alternate emergency runways over the Atlantic? Andy C, we've only got an hour here, and that's a really big question. I might write something about that on Instagram because it's a really big subject to talk about. ETOPs, which is extended range operations across the Atlantic with twin engine aircraft, that came about, I think the 767 was one of the first aircraft that got that sort of approval, because prior to the 767, it was 747s, 707s, and in the olden days, the old Super Constellations. They were all four-engine aircraft. Douglas Corporation came out with the DC-10 because by having three engines, they still didn't need the ETOPs. But basically, to get twin-engine aircraft across the Atlantic, you have to have approval to be able to fly on one engine for a certain amount of time. And originally, it was an hour on one engine. Then it went to 2 hours on one engine. Our A330s have 180 minutes, they now call it, which is 3 hours of ETOPS capability on one engine. And the A350 has an extra 15%. If you're good at maths, 15% of 180 is 207. So we're allowed to fly for 207 minutes on one engine on the A350, and that's how we plan our alternates. So basically, we can fly directly across the Atlantic, and for the carriers that have A350s across the Pacific, I think you can do a direct line from Australia to Los Angeles or San Francisco these days because of the alternate airports en route along there. But I can't cover out alternates and emergency runways right now on a short talk like this. But really good question, Andy C. Mike from Aircrew Interview, great question so far. Keep them going. I think that was for me, but anyway, I'm new to this. Alan again, Fokker or Airbus? If you could only choose one, Airbus, Airbus, and Airbus. I'm really sorry to all you Boeing pilots out there. I've been flying an Airbus man and boy since 1989. So yeah, I've only flown Airbuses really. So yeah, I don't want to go on a Boeing. I'm too old to go on a Boeing and learn all that technology in the purple line versus the green line. I'll stick with the green line. Timberwolf, what's the most hairy situation you've encountered while flying? Hairy. Flying into Kai-Tak Airport, which is a curved approach at night in a thunderstorm, was always pretty hairy, but it was also very exciting. Flying into New York's JFK Airport, doing the famous Canarsie approach in a snowstorm with a crosswind, is also hairy. But again, as a pilot, when you've got the right training, you've got the right qualifications, it's not so much hairy. It's actually good fun. It's challenging, and that's what we do this job for. Otherwise, it's boring, isn't it? Oliver again. I originally applied to VS MPL back in the day. Yeah, we did look at having an MPL, and they've canned is the wrong word, but we've decided not to do that because, number one, we've got plenty of applications from people with thousands and thousands of flying hours, but also, so we don't need to do an MPL situation. But I'm not saying that won't be the future in going forward, because aviation's really been upside down, or this last 18 months. So who knows what might happen? But good luck, Oliver. Keep applying. Things are going to change. Avgeek Joe, thanks. Good day to you too. I hope to see you one day flying. Yeah, up to YVR and SCA. I used to fly to Seattle. I did a few flights to Seattle. Seattle is one of those destinations that, flying from the UK, we used to leave early in the morning. I think we'd leave at 11 a.m. local time in the UK, and you'd get to Seattle at midday. So you've only changed 1 hour in virtual time, but you've actually been flying for 9 hours. And it was the weirdest thing for jet lag, because you'd arrive, probably your body clock is 9 p.m. in the evening, UK time, but it's lunchtime. So you go out for lunch, and then you think, well, I might have a beer with my lunch, and because your body feels like it's evening time. And by 8 p.m. in the evening in Seattle, you're absolutely like a zombie. You don't know what's up and down. So Seattle's a really good one to try and deal with jet lag. But as a destination, great place to go. I've been there in the summer. That was lovely. I've been there in the winter. Not so lovely. But it's still a great place. You can always go and find plenty to do in a big American city. If I'm not looking, I'm reading here. Luckily, I don't need glasses, but yeah, it's quite small font here. So where have we got? MGM. Seen from your chair or seat, how was the pandemic affected your job in the industry as a whole? I cover this daily on Instagram at Captain Chris, but the pandemic has been obviously devastating, not just to obviously people who've caught the virus, but for industries, especially like aviation, tourism, travel, and anybody in hospitality. They've been on their knees because of the pandemic and how it's affected their industries. From our point of view, flying, I will admit that last year it looked like Virgin may go under. Our CEO, Shai Weiss, is an amazing man when it comes to financing. He managed to refinance the company. Richard Branson obviously helped out. Lots of different financiers helped out to keep us going. And we proved our worth by keeping our aircraft flying and flying cargo all around the world. So the cargo operation, the Virgin Atlantic Cargo Department, has just done amazing things by finding us lots of contracts to keep our aircraft airborne. And that's basically kept us going from then until now. Obviously, we've had a few passenger flights resume. The Caribbean, a lot of the Caribbean destinations are working at the moment. I've just been out to Tel Aviv. That was great. But now I believe the Israeli government's going to call the UK a red country very soon. So that could be affected. But hopefully the cargo will keep us going in the interim. Indian destinations, Pakistan destinations are all doing okay. Lagos in Nigeria has been fine. But there hasn't been much resumption in much passengers flying across the Atlantic to the US, and that's our main business. We're called Virgin Atlantic, and a lot of our business is the Atlantic. We're carrying a lot of cargo and freight there, but we need to carry passengers. So that's a political thing. That's up to Boris and Joe to sort out. So I've got my fingers crossed here, but we've got to get that route going again. And when we do, I think there's some really great opportunities in aviation. Best book to read. I've just said 2 great books. For people looking to go for a job interview as a pilot, the best book to read is Handling the Big Jets. I think the guy's name's Davis. And the best book to read about aviation in general and how to be a good airline pilot would be Fate as a Hunter, a very old book, but a fantastic book. How dangerous are storms to airliners? Today's airliners, a storm is always dangerous. They've got metal in them. Even the carbon fiber aircraft have got metal through them to aid if you get a lightning strike. But basically, the best thing to do is fly around them. If you did encounter a thunderstorm, if you did fly through a thunderstorm, the aircraft is strong enough. People worry about the strength of the airliner. Do not worry about the strength of the airliner. I mean, you could fly through the biggest storm. It would be unbelievably uncomfortable, and we don't want to do it, and we don't want lightning strikes, because lightning strikes can damage the aircraft, and hail can damage the aircraft. The aircraft will still fly no matter what happens to it, and there's been examples of this throughout the world in the last few years. But yeah, the best thing is we have the most fantastic radar systems on these modern aircraft, and we just avoid the storms. We go around them. If we see storms en route, we just put extra fuel on and go around the storms. But obviously, if it does get bumpy, I like to get on the PA and talk to passengers just to reassure them that the aircraft's fine. What do we? Oh, geez, I'm not going quick enough. Too many questions. Here we go. Have I missed one? What was the most difficult passenger? Okay. Becoming a pilot is not easy. It's not easy, but if you take it one day at a time, if you take it one step at a time, and I always say, there's a lot of exams you've got to do to be a pilot, but if you just stick with one and do the next one and just pace yourself, you'll get through them. And aptitude is one of the best things to get you through your subjects. Just having the right aptitude. Aptitude meaning you want to do it, you'll do it. You'll find a way of getting through them. What do you need to focus on before you start your flight school? Maths and physics are the 2 most important subjects, I think, to become a pilot. Maths, not so much for flying. I mean, all you need is your 3 times table for any of you pilots out there. An aeroplane descends on the 3 times table. If you're at 40,000 feet, you need 120 miles to land. If you're at 10,000 feet, you need 30 miles to land. And if you're at 3,000 feet on final approach, that's about 9 miles out. So as long as you know your 3 times table, that's fine. But you need the maths for the calculations. Fuel is provided to you in US gallons in the States, imperial gallons some parts of the UK, and also litres in a lot of the world. And then you've got to convert those litres, US gallons and imperial gallons, to kilograms if you're flying an Airbus, or pounds if you're flying a Boeing. So it's all those sort of calculations that you need to have your maths for. Physics to understand how an airplane flies. But I would say just being good at maths, not great at maths, knowing your times tables. You don't have to be a maths expert, but just maths is a handy one to know. And it sounds silly, but geography is not bad as well. It's really good to know where you're flying to. You'd be surprised at how many pilots don't know various countries around the world. So having a good basic general knowledge of geography is always quite handy as a pilot. What's the most What's the most difficult passenger you ever experienced flying with? The most difficult passenger. Oh, we did have a guy once on a Johannesburg flight who was touching the girls inappropriately, and we asked him to stop. He didn't stop. He'd had a few drinks, and we had the police meet him in Johannesburg, and he was taken off by the police and put in a cell. So and then charges were pressed. But I've also had another passenger who was restrained. And again, it's normally people drink too much on airplanes. Don't drink on an airplane. That's my best advice. Watch the films, have a nice meal, maybe have one drink, but alcohol will affect you badly on an airplane. And if you drink too much alcohol or more than you usually do, and you're on an airplane, you're going to get really drunk really quickly. And if you're the sort of person who's going to get in trouble, you're going to get in real big trouble on an airplane. And it's dangerous to everybody else around you. So just don't do it. right? That's most difficult. Chelsea, there's a new name. Chelsea said, what's been your favorite aircraft to fly? That's a really easy one. If you can see the picture that's behind me right now, that's the Airbus A350. And I must say, with, 24,500 flying hours and about 18,000 hours only on Airbuses, I've flown them all except the 380, but the 350 is by far the best aircraft I've ever flown. I'm flying the 330 at the moment, and people said, well, what's the 330 like then? The 350, think of it as the 350 is the brand new Porsche 911, the top of the range Porsche 911 that you can buy in 2021. The A330 is a classic Porsche. It's a fantastic, it's the old air-cooled model, and it's got a real nice noise about it. So, the A330 is still a fantastic airplane to fly, but the A350 is definitely, it's got all the bells and whistles, everything, is brand new, and it smells new, and all those other things about a new airplane, which are amazing. So, yeah, definitely the A350, Chelsea. Issy said, Mohammed, what's the thing that encouraged you to wake up early, fly 2 legs or more with a day? Do you know what? Just going flying is the best thing. And for those of you out there who are private pilots, or you're doing your commercial pilot's license now, I know you all love flying, but you're paying to fly at the moment. So you're having to get money out of your pocket or your parents or a loan that you've got. So you're using somebody else's money or your money to fly an airplane. The day you start getting paid to fly an airplane, the day you start getting paid to doing something you love, I mean, that's the best day of your life. I still take off now, and just after takeoff, whenever we pulled the gear up and we're cleaned up the aircraft and we're heading out across the Atlantic or heading out east or something, I look across to the other seat, no matter who they are, if I've flown with them before, and they're waiting for it if they've flown with me before, and I look across and I say to them, imagine if you could get paid to do this, because that's exactly how I feel on every single flight. I'm so excited and delighted that I have a job like musicians. They play music for a living. They get paid for it. I mean, when you do something that you actually really love to do and somebody will pay you to do it, you're the luckiest person on earth. Not everybody's like that. 80% of the population do a job they hate, they say. Or statistics are, 79% of them made up. But yeah, people who do a job that they love are the luckiest people on earth. And I must say I'm one of them. And even we've been through a pandemic, I'm lucky to be in a position where I can, like speaking to you people now, that I'm supporting aviation and I'm supporting my colleagues that are still out of work. And that's what I'm here for. That's what I set up my Instagram account for, by using my fortunate position to speak to others and say, it's all going to be okay. Aviation will come back. People will buy airline tickets like they bought toilet paper. We will be flying every day and our airplanes are going to be full again. It will happen. It's really weird talking to yourself, but yeah, I've got you people. It's funny, this. I get carried away with myself, which is really odd. Best plane to fly. Alan's asked about the A330, A350. I've answered that. Dylan, is Virgin getting the Boom Overture? Now, I believe, and again, I don't know for certain, I believe Sir Richard Branson is one of the shareholders of the Boom SST aircraft. So I would assume that we might get them. Unfortunately, I'm 57 years old. Unless they can keep me flying till 85, I won't get to fly one, but I'll certainly be flying one as a passenger. So I hope that Virgin will get the SSTs. But right now, we're still in a pandemic. We still need to concentrate on getting the aircraft we've got back flying now. We need to get our colleagues back flying, and the whole industry needs to start growing again. But once that starts happening, you may find that there'll be an announcement about future aircraft, and fingers crossed we'll see a supersonic aircraft with Virgin Atlantic paint scheme on it. Avgeek Joe, thanks. You're welcome. Andy, thanks for answering my earlier ETOPs question. Exactly. I'll buy you a curry next time. Oh, that's really nice, Andy. I love a curry. All right, Andy, fantastic. And I think I know where we might go. Flight Express, what's the best advice you have been given throughout your career? And hello for Canada. Hello from Southwest France. The best advice you've been given. Okay. I'm still flying during the pandemic, because I was flying the newest aircraft available in the industry. I was flying an A350. So any pilot, I think this is worldwide, who was flying an A350 or a 787 when the pandemic hit is possibly still flying. If you're flying a 777 or a 747 or an A340 like some of our pilots, through no fault of their own, the pandemic hit and the airlines had to make quick decisions. One of the decisions was, let's ground all the aircraft that cost us the most money to run. And they were the 4-engine aircraft. So my best advice, and it's been given to me before, is always fly the newest aircraft you can get your hands on. right? Always be endorsed or rated on the newest aircraft in the skies, and that will help your career. Because I remember a friend of mine many years ago when I joined Virgin as a first officer on the A340-300, which is a brand new aircraft, A340-300. He was a captain flying a BAC 111, and he said, what do you think I should do? Should I come to Virgin and fly the A340, but I'd have to give up my command? And I said, yeah, definitely, because you're flying the newest aircraft in the industry. And he chose not to come to Virgin. And I think he was unemployed within 10 years because people stopped flying BAC 111s, and that's the only aircraft he had on his license. And to get yourself rated on a big expensive jet costs a lot of money. So unless you've got to spare 30 or 50,000 pounds to get yourself qualified, it's not the right thing to do. So my best bit of advice is be on the best aircraft to keep you employed, and obviously flying hours, keep current. So the best way to do that is, again, being on the newest aircraft. It's not always easy, but if you're looking as a career, the best career advice I can give you is get on the most relevant or the newest aircraft. The A320 is still a relevant aircraft because it's an Airbus, and the A320 has the same cockpit or similar cockpit to the 330, 340, and 350, and even the 380. So that's my advice. Chelsea back again. Cabin crew here. Oh, hi, Chelsea. Cabin crew. Fantastic. Most important question, what's your favorite crew meal on board? Do you know what? I'm actually not too chubby, but I did hit 100 kilos at one stage, and that was from eating far too many Virgin Atlantic upper class meals on board the flights. I managed to do a bit of running and slim down to 90 kilos, but and also doing cargo flying, there's not much food on board the aircraft, but we've now got passenger flights back again. And the favorite meal is any curry on board a Virgin Atlantic airplane out of Heathrow Airport has been cooked by Indians or Pakistanis, and it's a really good curry. And you cannot, as we say in the crew, you can't get a bad curry out of Heathrow. So I always go for the curry if I can, whether it's an upper class curry, a Virgin Atlantic premium class curry, or even the economy curries in economy class in Virgin. They're all fantastic. And sometimes they put a curry in the crew meals, but yeah, a curry in the crew meal is still good. Next question. It said Mohammed, I hope I'm saying that correctly. There is a cockpit camera that pilots can see outside of the door, or there is a cockpit. Why is there no camera in the fuselage or galley? But the captain is confident. Well, on the A350, we've actually got a tail camera, so we can see from the top of the tip of the tail the whole upper side of the aircraft and the engines from the tail. We've also got a nose camera, which is underneath the belly of the aircraft, looking at the nose wheel, so we can actually see the undercarriage. And in the galley, we have 3 cameras, so we can see directly outside the cockpit door and also either side of the front galley to see what's going on out there. So we do have quite a few cameras, and we can select the different cameras if we need. So was that answering your question? I hope it was. But we do have cameras on the fuselage in the galleys. Stopped raining here, by the way, too. Mike, hello, Mike. Why is it that larger 4-engine airliners such as the A340 and A380 are dying out in favour of the twin-engine jets? That's not just the fuel burn, Mike, because I thought that as well. I thought, well, a 4-engine aircraft burns more fuel than a twin-engine aircraft. Yes, it does. It burns a little bit, but also the new technology twin-engine aircrafts are far more efficient than the equivalent 4-engine aircraft. For example, an A330 burns exactly the same. Sorry, an A350 1000, which is what I fly, burns about the same fuel as an A330. And on a long flight, like for example, a flight from London to Los Angeles on an A350 will burn less fuel, right, than an A330 on that same route, right, and it'll do it quicker, and it will carry 50% more passengers. So the A350 is better for carrying cargo, better for carrying passengers. It's more efficient. And the other thing is, I've been told by the engineers, if you've got a 4-engine aircraft, that's 4 engines you have to do maintenance on. And that takes time, and that's maintenance time on the ground. It's also engineering time on the ground, and it's time. So it's time on the ground, it's time in the air. So that the new efficient A350s and 787 aircraft are the best aircraft when it comes to comparing 340s and 380s. And again, it's the 4-engine thing. 4 engines means 4 times the maintenance. I'm not saying they'll ever come back again. I believe Lufthansa have brought back some 340-600s, and they're even flying their 747-800s. So, the pandemic has changed everything, and airline management had to make quick decisions. So I'm not saying they're never going to come back, but at the moment, we're not looking to bring back 4-engine aircraft, but never say never. Have I missed a couple here? Timberwolf, back again. If you could fly any aircraft apart from the obvious things like Spitfires, etc., what would it be? Aircraft like Spitfire if anybody's got a Spitfire out, I'd love to come flying in your Spitfire, by the way. Give me a DM. But a Concorde, I think, would be the one that every single pilot of my era missed out on flying. So it's just one of those aircraft. I was a generation too young to fly the Concorde or put myself in a position to fly the Concorde. But that would have been my ultimate airliner to fly. I've been offered by maybe somebody who's watching here to fly the simulator. I'm going to take up that offer to fly the simulator. Aircraft flying today, I think I'm pretty lucky that I'm flying probably the best airliner in the world. The A350 is possibly the best airliner flying in today's skies. I'd love to fly an A380 because the A380 is the biggest Airbus, and I've never had the opportunity to do that. And also, maybe if I have to retire at 65 and the airlines don't keep me till 70, who knows what the rules are going to be when I turn 70 or 65, I'd love to maybe fly like business jets. Everybody loves looking at something like a Gulfstream. I mean, they're beautiful aircraft. So maybe a fast, high-altitude business jet is the career for me once I finish my aviation or airline career. Passenger flight or a cargo flight? That's a good question. Right. Passenger flights are great because you have lots of people on board. They're going somewhere. It's a nice feeling. We have cabin crew on board. It's just it's basically what I do for a living and what I've been doing all my career. Since we did the cargo flights, at first it felt eerie flying an aeroplane around with no passengers and lots of empty seats, but the cargo holds are full. And I know the company's making money, so that's good. But also, I love the fact that the cockpit door's open, just like the old days. We have the cockpit door open, and you don't have to wear masks around the cabin. It's just you and the other pilot and the cabin crew member. But it is a bit lonely. The cargo flights are great because you can go on time. You don't have to wait for passengers that are still in duty free. You don't have to wait for their baggage to be loaded. But there's very minor advantages flying cargo over passenger flying. So yeah, I do prefer the passenger flying, and I look forward to the passenger flying coming back. But as I said earlier, the problem with the passenger flying is that all those lovely meals, I'll get stuck into that upper class food again. So I've got to watch my waistline and get back to running. Right, imagine flying liners. This is from MGM. Imagine flying liners and small props are very different. I imagine flying liners and small props are very different. Still, all pilots receive their basic training on them. What is the most important thing to take with you, and what isn't very relevant? Okay, so small aircraft. I think it's procedures. On small aircraft, you can actually get a little airplane airborne without doing much of a checklist. You just start the engine, you make sure the doors are checked, and you have your bump checks, and you have your all the different checks that you do, and you do them on mnemonics, and you do them out of your head. Whereas in an airline, you need either a formal checklist, or we have now digital checklists that come up on the screens. So I think being disciplined with procedures is the best thing to take from small aircraft to big aircraft, and try and sharpen up your discipline with the checklist. Whether you're flying a PA-28 or a Swearingen Metroliner or some other small aircraft or a turboprop, if you're good with your checklists on that aircraft, you'll be safe, and safety is what the airlines want. So when you go for an interview, you want to have that safety mindset with you. So the best thing to take is a discipline towards checklists and procedures is probably the best thing to take with you, and is most relevant. What's the difference between turbulence and clear air turbulence? Okay. Clear air turbulence is when two large air masses, when you watch the news and you see there's high pressure here and there's low pressure here, it's when the high pressure and low pressure meet in the sky, the winds change, and that creates turbulence. As one parcel of air is moving up and the other one's moving down, that creates turbulence. And if you fly through that, it's called clear air turbulence because it's not generally or not always associated with weather. So we don't have what's known as cumulonimbus clouds, the thunderstorm clouds that you've probably got there in the UK now, and which I can see coming in the distance here. The big grey clouds that are puffy on the top that look like an anvil, they're cumulonimbus clouds. So obviously we fly around storm clouds, but clear air turbulence you can't always predict. Our flight planning department are very good at looking at the weather patterns and predicting where the clear air turbulence may be, but it's not always an exact science. So if we do get clear air turbulence, we put the seatbelt signs on, we speak to other pilots out en route and ask them if different levels are better, because it might be better at 39,000 feet than 37 or lower or higher. So we try and pick the altitude where there's less turbulence to avoid it, to basically make it smooth for our passengers. If you're flying cargo, it doesn't matter. There's an advantage of flying cargo. You'd have to put the seatbelt signs on. Alan again, how dangerous is St Elmo's fire? St Elmo's fire isn't dangerous at all. Lightning is dangerous, but St Elmo's fire isn't. St Elmo's fire is almost a warning that lightning's on its way. So St Elmo's fire is telling you you're probably getting a little bit too close to a cumulonimbus cloud, so adjust your heading. It's almost a warning. It's very pretty. It's nice to look at, but you're not really looking at it. When you get St Elmo's Fire, you're thinking, okay, we need to divert a little bit further around this cloud or we might get struck by lightning. So we always try and avoid it. MKMD, exploration and paranormal. Oh, have you ever had a bird strike? If you're one of the Virgin Atlantic engineers, I'd know that you've done this one on purpose, because it's not a joke, but it's the first ever takeoff I did on a Virgin Atlantic A350, brand new spanking aircraft, $366.5 million aircraft, direct from Toulouse factory. We took it up to Glasgow, and on my first ever takeoff out of Glasgow airport, I hit a Seagull, and there's a dent on one of the slats from that takeoff. So that wasn't my fault. It was one of those things, but the engineers keep ribbing me about the fact that I dented the first aircraft on the first flight ever. So yeah, so if it's one of the engineers, yeah, I get it. You're still having a go at me for that. It wasn't my fault. The bird shouldn't have been there. He should have looked out. Walter Mitty, that's a good name. Any thoughts about the MH370, Captain? On things like the Malaysian 370 aircraft, that's the one that went missing. Everybody's got their own theory. I've got my own theory. And the more I speak about my theory, I think, do you know what? Until we actually know, my theory is just a theory like anybody else's. You know, my theory is that they might have had a fire or smoke on board the aircraft. They went through the emergency procedures for a smoke or fire on board, which means turning the radios off. And maybe that was the radio they were transmitting on to say that they had a problem, and that transmission never came out. And maybe they were overcome by smoke and fumes, and the aircraft kept flying on the autopilot. That's a lot of other people have had that theory as well. I mean, one day we'll find out. I'm sure we will find out. Technology is increasing all the time. It was a terribly sad event. Like I said, everybody's got a theory. It's not paranormal. It's not UFOs. It's not hijacking even, or terrorist. I think it's just a genuine terrible accident that happened, and there'll be an explanation for it. Okay. Pakistani curry is brilliant on the taste, but heavy on the stomach. I'd agree on that. Yeah, that's very good. They're all great, aren't they? You know, I know that there's always that Indian versus Pakistani thing. They both make great curries, so I love them both. Don't get us talking on curries. I love a curry. I could do with a curry now. That's one thing you can't get in the south of France very much, is curries. Get lots of other great food. The French are great for food, but not for curries. Alan, is it true that aircraft have horns to tell the ground crew? Yeah, it's funny. We do have a horn. Although they don't generally hear it. We've got a button we can press, and it just makes a beep, beep sound. We can hear it in the cockpit, but because it's so noisy outside the aircraft, I'm not sure they always hear it. But it also puts a flashing light on, so that if the engineer doesn't hear the horn, he may notice the flashing light and then connect to the intercom and speak to us. Good question. Alan again. Oh, no, it's raining again. It's not raining. It stopped raining where I am. I could get rid of this background behind me, which is flaring my head when I move, I know, but it's not that boring. I'm sitting in the garden at my home in France, and it's raining, or it has been raining. Dylan Minette, do you think that Virgin will do what Cathay Pacific are trying to do with the single flight deck operations in the future with no first officer? Great question. Right. First thing, Airbus are developing a single pilot aircraft, but I can't see that happening, not in my career anyway, and maybe not in my lifetime. The problem with it is that you do need two people up there. You do need two people up there. Now, I would go as far as to say that maybe in the future you may have one qualified pilot, but you will have two people up there to make sure the qualified pilot's okay. But the second person will be trained to be able to operate the automatic systems to help the aircraft to land, or at least be a radio communicator. So they'll have some basic training. They may not require a pilot's license, so there may be only one qualified pilot on board the aircraft, but there will be a second person up there just in case that qualified pilot was to get ill or die even, to be able to bring that aircraft back onto the ground safely. Because even though we know about drones and that, I don't think passengers are going to get on board a pilotless airplane just yet. I know my generation won't, but maybe when my kids are my age, they might be keen on that idea. But most of the passengers who buy the tickets are my age or younger, and I don't think they'll be buying tickets on pilotless aeroplanes for a little while. We'll probably see cargo operations start with this first. And once that's been proven that it's safe to do with cargo, then you may say it happening with passengers. But aviation moves very slowly. So I can't imagine a single pilot cockpit for at least 20 years from now. I'll probably be wrong, but 20 years is my figure on that one. Timberwolf, who is the most famous person you've flown, and did you speak to them? Oh, really good question. The most famous depends on what you put on fame. So famous, like I've had Samuel L. Jackson in the cockpit. I've had all the cast of Friends in the cockpit. Pierce Brosnan, Elton John, Kylie Minogue, she sang to me. Saidia Garrett from the brand new Heavies, if you remember them. Who else? Oh, so many people, so many. But the most famous, I suppose, for situation was Princess Diana walking in the cockpit. Obviously, we knew she was on board, and she had her people with her sitting in the what we called the B zone of the A340-300, and we'd all been briefed, especially the cabin crew, that we would curtsy or bow when we met her, and we were to call her Your Highness. And out of the blue, because the cockpit door used to be open in those days, she just walked into the cockpit and she sat down. She said, "May I sit down?" And I sort of tried to stand up and bow, and she said, and she just laughed at me, and I said, "Oh, yes, Your Highness, you can sit down." And she said, "Call me Diana." So it was a lovely moment. We sat there and we just talked. And so, is that the most famous person? It was the most interesting moment, having a princess on board your airplane and having a chat to somebody who was very special in those days and still is special now in everybody's minds. But yeah, lots and lots of famous people used to or always flew with us. One of the funniest moment, if you've ever seen the film Airplane. It was Flying High in Australia, Airplane. And there's that moment where, what's his name now? The guy who comes in the cockpit. I've forgotten his name. I just had it on the tip of my tongue. He comes in the cockpit. Somebody will type it here. And Leslie Nielsen. So Leslie Nielsen comes in the cockpit and he says, "I just want to say good luck. We're all counting on you." Leslie Nielsen was on a LA flight with me. I knew he was on board again, but I didn't expect him to open the cockpit door at 3,000 feet on final approach and say those lines. It was just so funny. And we just laughed so much. He just opened the flight deck door and said, "Good luck, we're all counting on it," and shut the door again. So yeah, lots of famous people fly with Virgin Atlantic, and they still do now. But the cockpit door is unfortunately closed these days. Oscar Panzer, which was the most difficult airport to land? Kai Tak Airport in Hong Kong? Yeah, Kai Tak Airport definitely in Hong Kong. It was that curved approach. The runway wasn't the longest runways in the world, and you were flying directly towards a mountain before you made the turn, and you were doing it regularly in heavy torrential tornado type storm weather. So that was quite tricky. And when you're a young captain in your 30s, obviously I was up to it and everybody else was up to it, but it was a challenging approach and it was an exciting approach. So that was the most challenging approach today we do is in airliners that I fly to. There's obviously lots of different difficult airports around the world, but the one that I fly to is, say, New York, doing the curved approach into New York. And again, flying into New York's JFK Airport on the curved 1-3 left Canarsie approach in a snowstorm at night is quite challenging as well. MGM, any favorite Russian plane? And thank you for your answers. Here from Denmark. Oh, you're Denmark. Russian planes. I like those big. I don't even know what their numbers are. They've all got numbers, haven't they? The Tupolovs, those big ones with the 6 engines and I don't know how many wheels. I love watching those things take off. They're amazing. Thoughts on a new floatable black box? Gosh, that's a good idea. There's one for you, Alan. You need to invent that. If somebody hasn't thought about it already, that's a great idea. A floatable black box. I think there's technology that can be improved on all things in aviation, and that could be one of them. Or maybe one that's with so much satellite technology these days, maybe a black box that's directly connected to a satellite 24/7, so they know exactly where it is. That might be another one to think about. Dylan, again, I think you mentioned that you are in Toulouse. Yes, I live near Toulouse, the home of Airbus. Just by chance, I've only flown Airbuses in my career, and I do live near Toulouse as an Australian. Are you training at Airbus or taking delivery of the next Virgin 350? Because I'm a training captain, I'm pretty busy training pilots in the simulator or line training the actual aircraft online. And generally, the delivery flights are done by our management team. So the management team come down here, they meet all the brass from Airbus, they go out for dinner, and it's like 2 or 3 days of exchanging of contracts and signing of bits of paper. And for a training captain, it's just not really efficient for me to do that. Yes, I know I live near Toulouse and it would be convenient, but they'd also have to send another pilot down anyway. I have done some of the delivery flights on the A340-600s because I live nearby, and that was only what happened there is somebody got sick and they said, "Oh, Chris, can you head off to the airport and fly one of our brand new 340s back for us?" So unless that happens, I can't see myself doing the delivery flights, but you never know. Maybe that'll happen again. Jeffrey Davis. G'day, Jeffrey. Have you ever almost crashed? I think one of the best, not an airliner, obviously, and big aircraft, but I think one of the best things, it sounds awful, but one of the best things you can do as a young pilot in light aircraft is to scare yourself. Sounds terrible, but it's true. If you've scared yourself in a light aircraft, in other words, almost crashed, as you said, it makes you a better pilot, because it makes you realize how dangerous aviation can be if you're not on your guard and you don't have the correct training and you don't do the correct procedures. So no, I haven't almost crashed, but I have scared myself in little airplanes when I first started learning to fly. And if you're a light aircraft pilot, you'll know exactly what I mean. And once you do start scaring yourself in little airplanes, you do actually become a better pilot. And that's why we gauge pilots' experience based on hours, because basically the more hours you've got, the more opportunities you've had to scare yourself. So I'm not saying keep scaring yourself. If you're at my level of aviation, you're scaring yourself, you shouldn't be flying. But yeah, no, scaring yourself is good, but getting better, getting less scared is the most important thing. Favorite route to the Caribbean from Alan. Favorite route, I love a Barbados. I do love St. Lucia, but only because the trips that we did to St. Lucia, we'd sometimes get up to 5 days there. So that felt like a mini holiday. So that's, I suppose if I had 5 days at Barbados or Antigua or any of the other Virgin Atlantic destinations, I'd love them as much. I think St. Lucia. Yeah, I love St. Lucia. Love going there. It's just where we stayed was lovely. John Ellis, don't senior flight attendants sit in the seat when pilots use the bathroom? We did have that for a while. After the German wings accident, there was a moment there because, again, airlines had to make a decision, or the regulators had to make a decision on what to do. And when we went to the toilet, one of the cabin crew would have to come in the cockpit just so that there were 2 people in the cockpit. And that was a procedure. I think most airlines adopted that, but most airlines are not using that procedure anymore because it was deemed that was a one-off incident. And there are also precautions now to prevent that from happening again. Alan's big on the questions. Surely you can't be serious. I am serious, and don't call me Shirley. No, I've never had him on board, but yeah. Leslie Nielsen, another great line. Pop art fiction. You retracted your message. Because you probably were answering the Leslie Nielsen question. Very good. Dylan Manette, do you think you will ever train for the 787 to see what it's like? No. I'm an Airbus pilot through and through. I fly Airbuses. I know the Airbus. I'm a training captain. And I think that to be a good training captain, you need to know your aircraft. And I know Airbuses back to front. So as long as I keep training and teaching people on Airbuses, that's where I want to be. I don't want to go on the 787 and not be as good an aircraft trainer because I don't know the aircraft and I don't have the lineage of flying the older Boeings like the 727, the 737, 747, 757, 767. I haven't flown any of those aircraft. So I think pilots that have flown Boeings are good at flying Boeings, and I'll stick with the Airbus for the moment. It's a great looking aircraft, by the way, the 787. In the cockpit, I don't think much of the exterior, and that's for somebody I know. I think it's ugly on the outside. Anyway, what do we got here? MKMD again. Have you ever seen anything unusual like a UFO? I think I covered that earlier. No, never. There's no such thing as UFOs, and we could have a big, long discussion on that. It doesn't exist. If somebody's come in from another planet, they'll let us know. Also, the US Air Force had QB-47 target drones, basically an uncrewed bomber. Yeah, I think Air Force having uncrewed drone aircraft is fine because there's no passengers' lives involved. And if one of them malfunctioned and went down in the desert in Nevada, nobody's going to know because they wouldn't tell anybody. And also, if it's flying over a war zone, that's fine. It's fine having pilotless aircraft when you've got no passengers. But as a passenger myself, I'm not going to get on an airplane that has no pilots, not for a long time yet. So no, I don't think that's going to happen for passenger flying. We might see more like your FedExes and your Primes and your DHLs flying with not pilotless, but maybe one pilot cockpits. But the loadmaster will probably be qualified to land the aircraft as well. So I think that's the next stage for less pilots in the cockpit. And also, flight time duty limitation. Pilots are not going to get less tired by having one pilot. They're going to get more tired. So we need people to cover the long sectors as well. Alan, thought of Virgin Atlantic on a new A330 900 Neo. We are getting the A330 Neos, the new A330s. They were supposed to come, I might get this wrong, at the end of 22. I believe they're coming at the end of 23. That's the latest I've heard at the moment. So the plan was the end of 22. They're looking at the end of 23. But as I've said before, I mean, nobody can predict anything at the moment. We're still in a pandemic. We're still in not so much survival mode, but we're in like, let's get the aircraft, let's get the airline industry going again mode. Aviation will come back. It'll come back big. But all those aircraft sitting out in the desert, somebody's got to fly them, and passengers want to fly on them. We all know that there's a pent-up demand for travel. So that will come back. People will come back flying. So we will get the 330 Neos. F-18s deploy a digital FDR when pilot ejects, which floats. Great idea, John. So somebody is doing it. So military aircraft are doing it. And that's like a lot of stuff that comes from military aviation is high in technology because it can be tested on military aircraft, and that might find its way into civilian aircraft. It's just like a lot of the stuff from Formula One racing ends up in your private cars. So, we could see stuff like that developing. Alan, did you ever have any in-flight emergencies? It's really funny. That's a really funny question. I get asked that a lot because people obviously concerned about aviation ask that question. I always answer no, but then not every flight, but every now and then something will fail. When we went into Tel Aviv the other night, the GBSs failed because they were being jammed. It's part of the briefing. We expected it. So is that an in-flight failure? We knew it was going to happen, and we reset them and they worked again. So we regularly get things that go wrong, but in-flight emergencies, no, I've been fortunate. I actually am touching wood, but I've been fortunate. I've never had any serious in-flight emergencies that required diversions or anything like that. And also these days, if we get a sick passenger on board, we can normally deal with it on board the aircraft. And our cabin crew are unbelievably well trained, and we have direct connections through satellite communications with doctors on the ground as well. So it's incredible what we can do these days with technology. Dylan, I'm getting a bit hoarse here. Talking to yourself is a really weird thing. There's no rum in this, by the way. So Dylan said, so do VS pay for you to fly to London to do your job? No. Really good question. So I choose to live in France, southwest France. I like the countryside here. I like the weather here, although it's raining, but it's probably a bit cooler in London. And as a long-haul pilot, as long as I can get myself to work and I can get there safely, and if I'm beyond 90 minutes travel from the airport, I have to come the day before. So as long as I can get myself to work and make sure I'm at work, that's fine. I've been living in France for 25 years. I've never missed a flight. I've never had to call in sick because I missed a flight. I've never even had a sick day, actually. But I've made sure I get to work, and I still do it now. And during the pandemic, it's not made it any easier. I'm having to travel via Charles de Gaulle or Madrid or Amsterdam or Brussels to get to work. But I normally come the day before, stay in a hotel. I'm well relaxed so that I can operate the aircraft safely the next day. So, yeah, the commuting's become more difficult, but it'll go back to how it was before. But no, Virgin don't pay for those tickets. If I choose to live in London, they wouldn't pay for my train ticket. I choose to live in Toulouse. They don't pay for my flights. Timberwolf, has a military jet ever formed up with you to say hello? No, but I've seen pictures of our new aircraft down in Toulouse where a Raphael came up to say hello to one of our aircraft. And that was quite impressive, but not me personally. I think if a military aircraft comes up to say hello, it's probably because I've done something wrong. So I don't really want to see that happen. Stein Pedersen, hello, that's a new one. What is the most fun and rewarding kind of flying for you? Airliner or hands-on flying in GA? I've done both recently, and rewarding, even though I've been doing it all my life or as an adult, flying airliners, I still love going to work. I mean, I look at my roster and I look forward to my next flight. And I think when I stop doing that, that's the time to retire. But at the moment, I still look at my roster, and my next trip is actually to Chicago on the weekend, and I'm already looking forward to going to Chicago. I'm looking forward to get my hands on that big jet. And it isn't always positive climb, gear up, autopilot on. If it's a nice day and the weather's good and the other pilot's up to it, because it's obviously safety related, we generally hand fly the aircraft. Have a bit of hand flying of the aircraft, and obviously we're following a flight director, so probably it doesn't seem that exciting to a private pilot, but hand flying an aircraft on an approach, take the auto thrust out, and do a manual flight with a manual landing is always good fun on a big aircraft, just like it is on a small aircraft. But also I've had the opportunity to fly a light aircraft called a Sling. In fact, I just noticed I'm wearing one of their shirts. Sling aircraft, which is a South African aircraft. I got to fly that with Sling Pilot Academy in Los Angeles. Oh, sorry, Los Angeles. Yeah, it's at Torrance Airport. Sling Pilot Academy. I got to fly with them on one of their Sling aircraft out to Catalina, and flying into a small airstrip on the top of an island, the Catalina Island, was just so special. That was amazing, flying a light aircraft. So they're two completely different things. It's like saying driving a brand new Mercedes S-Class or riding a Ducati motorbike. They're very, very different things. They're both vehicles that ride on the road, but they're very, very different vehicles. So yeah, they're very, very, they are completely different to me. But I love them both. Walter Mitty, Malaysian flight crew here. Airbus versus the PA-28, personal flying joy. Sorry, Airbus. I've done my days in the PA-28, and the PA-28 was fun, but it was an old aircraft when I flew it in 1981. It's a really old aircraft now. It's a great aircraft, but it's an old aircraft. Alan Gaming, favourite food on layovers? Well, it depends where we are. If I'm in the where am I? If I'm in India, obviously a curry. If I'm in Hong Kong, China, Chinese food is wonderful. If I'm in the States, a burger, never go past a burger or a nice big Chicago pizza. I was in Tel Aviv last week, and the hotel had the single most amazing spread of food available on the buffet. So I go local wherever I am if I can. Always go local. John Ellis, have you given sim lessons to flight attendants before? We've actually taken a few flight attendants into our simulators. We had a program a few years ago where we thought it was a good idea to get some of our flight service managers, the most senior cabin crew managers on the aircraft, into the simulators, and that was a really good opportunity to show them what goes on. And we just did things that they would never see, like an emergency evacuation, like a rejected takeoff, and what we actually do as pilots, so that they can get a feeling of what we're doing and how busy we may be at certain stages of those flights. So it was a really good idea. It did work well, but we stopped doing it because basically it was an expensive thing to do, because you've got to take that flight attendant off the flight. You've got to put them in the simulator, and simulators aren't cheap. Now, these are $12 million pieces of equipment, and they cost $600 an hour to run. So it was just a money thing. So maybe if the airlines have got money again in the future, they'll do it. But it wasn't that. It was great for the cabin crew, and it was great for us to see what they were doing, but it wasn't. It was a compromise. It didn't really work, for the time and the money.
So, Chris, I'm just going to interrupt you there. Maybe you want to pick 2 or 3 questions, and we'll wrap up this Q&A if you're happy with that.
Yeah, it's been really weird talking to myself, but I'm not talking to myself because I know there's people out there. It's just I'm new to this, guys. This is very, very new to me.
Yeah, it's a new thing for him. So yeah,
I got but I knew he was listening. All right, where's a good one here? The question, Andy, there, the A350 hydraulic system. It's basically like a model aircraft. It's got independent servos on each control surface, electrically operated, but they are hydraulic. Best thing about being an Aussie bush pilot is being an Aussie bush pilot, flying around the Great Barrier Reef in float planes. That was great. Where's the good one? Weirdest job you ever had flying? I used to fly dead people. That's for my book. I'll write a book one day, I think. I've got too many things to talk about. And I think that's coming, because reading all this, where's the hardest airspace? The hardest airspace to transit through is, the Greeks and the Turks, they don't talk to each other, talk to both of them at the same time. So that's difficult, but it's only because they don't talk to each other. Going to Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, hopefully we go to Vietnam. I really do think so. And I don't know, Mike, do we just want to wind it up, or, that's your time there?
Yeah, I think maybe answer the last one, Chris, which is from, I'm guessing, NI. I think that, I think that'd be a great question to
dealing with ATC. How do I deal with ATC? Well, ATC, it's just getting used to the different accents. I mean, I have an accent myself, but the Chinese ATC, whoa, that's difficult. You've got to have a real ear for the Chinese ATC to understand what they're actually saying, because they're speaking English, but it doesn't sound English. The Greeks, they love to speak Greek to themselves, but English to you. And the French love to speak French to each other. I think we're running out of things. Cheers to Aircrew interview. I'm not sure if we're still online.
Yeah, we are.
I'm talking to myself. I'm very good at talking to myself.
No, I think that was. I think we're going to wrap that up there, Chris.
And waiting for Mike to say this is over. So I think he's doing his thing right now. So if I am still online, I just want to say to all of you, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for the great questions. Thanks for those who didn't ask questions but could understand me speaking at 1,000,000 miles an hour, because that's what I do. I went into my radio voice. When you speak on the radio, you have to be quick, especially in places like New York or Chicago. So that was my radio voice. I actually do talk slower in real life, but I was trying to get as much information there for you guys as I could in the 1 hour that Mike had allotted me. So I hope that was useful. I hope it was worthwhile. And I hope I get the opportunity to come back and speak to you wonderful people once again.
Yeah, absolutely. What a brilliant Q&A there, Chris. And thank you very much.
Because I can't hear anybody at the moment. And I can't hear Mike. He might tap in a minute.
Oh, can you not hear me, Chris?
Russian air traffic control is difficult as well. Thanks for the interview. Thanks for the interview. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Oh, so,
This is fun. I like it.
Can you
I
hear
really
me,
like
Chris?
it. I must do more of these. It's really pouring here at the moment.
Yeah, just like, I don't know if you guys in the comments can hear me, but Chris, can you hear me at the moment?
Just in time for the rain. Yeah, it is raining. I wonder if I can turn my background off. No.
Can you hear me, Chris?
Where's my background? Yeah, it's raining out here.
Right. 2 seconds,
Sitting out
guys.
by my pool.
Oh, lovely.
Although it's not really swimming weather at the moment.
Can you guys in the comments hear me? If you can just...
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Lots of messages coming in. Just in time for the rain. Yeah, it's raining here. I'm under a big umbrella, so I'm fine.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know if my mic is working. It should be working. Maybe you guys
Mike said
can
there's a
let
bit of
me in the
delay, so I'm
comments.
just waiting for that delay. I'll have a bit more of my non-rum and coke.
Cheers, Timberwolf. Yeah, so maybe it's a connection. Yeah. Okay, then I'm just going to wrap up.
I can hear you, but we can. Okay, so I guess Mike is talking to you. I can't hear him. Anyway, I'll let Mike talk then.
So anyway, guys, yeah, thank you very much for joining us in this live Q&A. There were some absolutely great questions, and I'm sure we're going to get Chris back on the channel. Yeah, we can hear you, Chris, but we're going to get hopefully Chris back on the channel. And yeah, thank you very much, guys, for coming on the channel. It's been an absolute privilege.
Yeah, Mike's working.
So I'm going to wrap up because obviously Chris can't hear us here. But yeah, but thank you very much again, guys. And yeah, we'll see you soon and hopefully get Chris back on. Cheers.